Hello and welcome to episode 10 of Wednesdays at Noon with PunkinFutz. And we're so happy to have everyone, and I can't believe that this is actually episode 10. And this one is personal to us just because we do have members of our team who have cerebral palsy, and right now with the current pandemic, I'm super happy to have our guests today. But before we introduce our guests, I want to take this time to thank frontline workers and just say thank you to everyone who is on the front lines and makes it possible for us to stay home right now. And we respect you, we thank you, we are with you. So thank you so much to everyone. And my name is Shanique Ruiz. For anyone who may not know me, I'm on team with PunkinFutz. And I also want to take this time to thank parents. That's something that we've started to do on Fridays, and I want to echo what my coworker Rebecca has done, and I want to take this time to say thank you to parents for everything that you are doing right now and everything that's expected of you, and everything that you are just, parents are superheroes. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. So today is really important because we are going to be talking about access, advocacy, and mental health during a pandemic. And we have the Weinberg Cerebral Palsy Center with us, who are based in New York City. And I have been connected and friends with them for a little while now, so I'm super happy to have them. And actually, before I missed something before, there is a 20-second lag in the comments. So when you guys do send comments, we get a 20-second lag, but we do see the comments and we want to connect with you. So please do engage with us. Hi, Jason. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. So I want to take this time to introduce Jan Moskowitz and Sabrina Miranda, social workers at the Weinberg CP Center. Why don't you guys take it away and tell us who you are and what do you do?
Sure. So my name is Sabrina Miranda. I'm a licensed clinical social worker at the Weinberg Family Cerebral Palsy Center at Columbia Orthopedics. I make up half of our social work team, and I help with coordinating care for patients, case management, advocacy support, and community resources to our children and adults with cerebral palsy.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. Thanks, Shanique, and your team at PunkinFutz for having us. My name is Jan Moskowitz. I am a licensed clinical social worker. I'm also at the Weinberg Family CP Center. I provide individual psychotherapy to our adult patients, and some for caregivers, provide overall support, and really just help connect our community members to one another and to really the community at large.
Amazing. I'm so happy to have you guys again. Thank you so much for joining us. And could you tell us a bit about the Weinberg Family Cerebral Palsy Center?
Sure. So here at the Weinberg Family CP Center, we're actually a smaller division of Columbia University Medical Center. We provide multidisciplinary, comprehensive care to patients of all ages with cerebral palsy. So birth until 99 plus, hopefully. We are made up of a group of orthopedic surgeons, neurologists, physiatrists, who are rehab medicine doctors. We connect with physical therapists and occupational therapists to really provide full mind, body, and health care to patients of all ages and caregivers as well.
Amazing. So as we get into maybe our third question by now, I would like to ask, how can we, right now during this pandemic, how does prolonged isolation affect people?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, with the population of people with cerebral palsy, oftentimes isolation is kind of not new. right? Especially if someone is a little bit more affected and maybe relies on a caregiver or a parent to get them places, to get them out of the house. And then you add on a global pandemic where things are closed and we can't go places and it's more challenging to go places. Isolation can be really hard. It affects your mind, it affects your body. For our population, our folks with cerebral palsy, a big part of their day, a lot of times, is some kind of physical exercise, whether that's physical therapy or going to a gym and exercising. And when these places are closed, right, not only does our population's bodies literally get tighter and hurt more, but it also affects our mental health, right? We know that exercise releases endorphins and makes our minds and our bodies feel good. So you take that away, and that's really challenging. Oftentimes, prolonged isolation can increase symptoms of depression, can increase feelings of sadness and loss. It can also increase feelings of anxiety, feeling this sense of doom or excessive worry. And those things are real, and we have to realize that the uncertainty within this pandemic can increase those feelings. I think isolation on anyone can be really challenging. And I think an added stressor of a physical limitation can make that a bit harder. And I think the first thing that we need to do is really acknowledge it. We need to acknowledge that isolation is real, isolation is scary, and it can really affect our mind and our bodies.
I see that Katrina joined us. Hi, Katrina.
Hi, Katrina.
I also want to add to that before we go on to Sabrina. I'm sorry. I relate to that so much just because of in my life right now, I was living at home alone in New York, in Brooklyn, and I literally just uprooted myself and came to North Carolina with my family for that exact reason. Isolation does affect people, whether you are able-bodied or have adaptive needs. Like it is both mental and physical, and like you noticed that I had a physical reaction when you said tightness. Like I feel really tight within myself right now just because I'm not able to get up, walk, and do the physical things in the everyday that is usually in our everyday life. So it is affecting me in that way as a person with cerebral palsy. Actually, I don't even think, did I say that? So when I introduced myself,
I don't think so.
I'm not sure that I even let the audience know that I do have cerebral palsy, which is how I'm connected to the Weinberg Family CP Center. I found out about them in my adult life. So yeah, that's how I'm connected.
Yeah, I just wanted to go off of that, Shanique. You mentioned something really important, that your body feels tighter, right? And that can be due partly from the physical isolation and not being able to get to your physical therapist, but anxiety lives in our body, right?
Yes.
We know this. We know that our bodies are often smarter than our minds, and they can cue us to how we're feeling. So a lot of times what we're feeling in our minds lives in our body. So a lot of that tightness too can be anxiety from the uncertainty of this pandemic, right? And then when you don't have the physical therapy to help loosen you, it's kind of tight on tight.
And it absolutely triggers for people to think like, oh my God, am I being affected by anxiety or is this COVID? Like I had that moment where I was thinking like, oh my God, what am I feeling? But then I had to kind of ground myself and bring myself back there. So yes, what you're saying is extremely like.
And I will touch on that too at a point, because I know that's a big question that often comes up, especially in light of an uncertain pandemic on something we've never seen before. Is this COVID? Is this symptoms? Or is this anxiety? And I'm sure we'll get into that a little bit later in our talk.
That's so important. So how can we fight the impacts of isolation?
So I think, Shanique, you said some really great points. I think it's important to remember that social distancing, or what I like to call as physical distancing, it doesn't mean emotional distancing. So our health is more than just our
So
physical health.
important.
It's also mental. So some of the things that we can do is to try to keep a daily routine, to take one day at a time as it comes. You know, to get up in the morning, to shower, to change out of your pajamas and into some real clothes, you know,
Yes.
casual clothes. Um, the time that we would spend, you know, commuting, we can now actually enjoy our breakfast. And it's also important to take care of our bodies. So trying to eat healthier, you know, now we don't have to eat out all the time. We can try to cook some new recipes. And then we touched upon, you know, the physical activity, especially if you're feeling anxious, you know, that, you know, doing some type of physical activity helps with our adrenaline as well. Um, and then getting plenty of sleep, trying to go to sleep at the same time. Our sleep definitely affects our mood and how we relate to other people as well. Another thing we can do is make time for connection. So it's important to keep visual, virtual, to actually see faces, to connect with people. And not only by phone, especially if you live alone, you know, it's important to have that FaceTime with other people. For example, you know, if you like to cook, you can still set up a cooking date with somebody and you can cook at the same time and talk to each other and then actually sit down and enjoy the food together and enjoy that company. So I would say just go ahead.
Sorry. That's a great point that just came
Yep.
up on the screen from Katrina. That's why mental health and disability awareness need to be
100%.
talked about. Yes, amen, Katrina. I agree. And actually, to your point, Sabrina, I think that that is really extremely important. My routine right now is very much the same. Even though I just uprooted to North Carolina for a bit, my routine is still for me to get up, shower, get dressed for work. We have virtual meetings every single day, and I look forward to that. Like the hardest thing for me was being at home alone and not having anyone to touch, anyone to see, anyone to really physically talk to. So I'm in a much better mood now that I'm at home with my family, but I did look forward to those virtual meetings in the morning every day at 9 o'clock. There was no day that we did not meet. So every day I look forward to seeing my coworkers, to seeing everyone that works at PunkinFutz, and now to be able to see my family. It really does affect your mood, and having that routine I think is extremely important. Which brings me to the next question that I think, yes, is really important for us to recognize, is that people do not always have, you know, that luxury to be happy and positive all the time. And is that normal?
Yeah, I think this is a great point. And I think this actually goes off of what you just said about your experiences, right? And I think you are really lucky in that you were able to get home to North Carolina and spend time with family. I wasn't able to, right? So I'm home alone. I live by myself and I'm doing all my work virtually. So there are people out there I know that are just like me, right? Who can't get home, who can't spend time with family. And so that long answer is it normal to feel depressed? 100% yes. 100% yes. This is what we're going through right now is not normal by any stretch of the imagination. No one could have prepared us for this. And even if you are one of those people who are super prepared for worst case scenarios, I think this is still something that is out of the box for us. Some people on a daily basis live with depression or anxiety. Some people don't. Is it harder for one group than the other? No, just different, right? If you've never experienced a bout of depression or anxiety, these new feelings could be very overwhelming and very scary, right? And what might that look like, right? It might look like sadness. It might look like lack of motivation. So even in talking about, you know, staying with that routine, making sure you're getting up and going to bed, that might be disrupted not by choice, but maybe you can't shut your mind off, right? So maybe you lay down, I usually go to bed between 11 o'clock and midnight, but I'm not falling asleep till 2:30 in the morning.
Absolutely. And then there are really no boundaries right now either. Like being at home and having work at home and needing to be at home and do social activities. Usually we have those boundaries where we can cut off when we go home,
right?
And not have to work during that time. But now everything is kind of smushed together, which then causes another kind of reaction where you're like, oh my goodness, like I'm getting tired of the same thing over and over again. Like,
yeah. And, and even this new norm that you've had, right? This new routine still gets disrupted because like what you said, work bleeds into life, bleeds into your afternoon activities. There's no kind of separation of like church and state, right? There's no work life, home life. And that's for those of us who are lucky enough to have jobs to begin with, right? A lot of people with CP, depending on how affected you are, don't have the ability to work, right? What looks different in their everyday life? So yes, it is very normal to have bouts of feeling depressed, feeling unmotivated, feeling a sense of loss, feeling a sense of really just hopelessness. And I think that kind of waves in with the anxiety of, is this going to end? When is this going to end? And what is my life going to look like once we hit a new normal? These are all very real feelings. They're very normal feelings.
Absolutely.
But they're also feelings that we can work through, right? They're not just feelings that don't have a solution and we're just saying, well, we'll sit with it because we're all going through it. There are ways, and we're going to get to that too, on really to help yourself get through these overwhelming feelings.
Right. Hi, Julia. Thank you for joining.
I wanted to touch upon Shanique's this point about living with family. I think that can be a blessing, and it can also be challenging, right? So I think it's important to take some intentional alone time for yourself as well. And whether that's, getting some sunshine and going for a walk, or just being alone, meditating. Also kind of creating those boundaries so that the days don't all just kind of mush together.
So our next question, what can I tell if how can I tell if I'm feeling anxiety or COVID-19? We touched on this in the beginning, but now we can go more into detail.
Yeah, this is a huge question that I get all the time. As we know, symptoms of anxiety can look different for everybody. But a lot of times when we are fearful of something, it can be a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? We give it to ourselves, right? Kind of like, I'm sure we've all done the Google black hole to Google a symptoms, and all of a sudden we have some random disease that no one's heard of because we go down that black hole. Symptoms of COVID-19, which I'm sure many people have heard, are the shortness of breath, the coughing, the difficulty breathing, lack of taste and smell, some GI symptoms, all of these things, right? Some symptoms of anxiety can look very similar, right? We can have some stomach issues. We can have difficulty breathing. We can have increased heart rate. We can have some sweating. I think the biggest thing to look for in telling the difference is twofold. A, what is your norm as you as a person? And B, what is the duration of these symptoms, right? So if you know that this is your norm, that you are an anxious person at baseline, you have had anxiety before, sometimes your heart will race, sometimes your palms will get sweaty. Okay, let's think about that as that's your baseline. So then we go to part B. How long have these symptoms been persisting? Did it just happen? Did it happen following, you watching the news briefing? Or has it been happening all day, every day for the past week? Right? It's kind of like anything else that you would go to the doctor for. Would you go to the doctor immediately if you have a headache for one day on an isolated incident? Or would you go to the doctor because you had a headache for 5 days straight and it wouldn't subside? Right? So I encourage people to think about their symptoms in terms of what they're looking at, what they feel like to them. Is this new to them, and how long has it lasted? Because what we know is from, the CDC is that, yes, we want to take care of everyone, right? But if your symptoms are mild, irregardless, we don't want people swamping the emergency rooms.
Absolutely.
That is when the healthcare systems get overflooded. So step one, if you are unsure, I am not a medical doctor. I'm not here to, help diagnose people. But if you are unsure and you are actually really concerned because you cannot tell the difference if it is anxiety or COVID, call your doctor.
Mm-hmm.
Don't just show up at an emergency room. Call your doctor, explain your symptoms. It's most important. But also try to, if you feel like, again, this is something that's coming and going, not really staying forever, monitor your symptoms. Look at them. Try breathing techniques. Try grounding techniques, which again, we'll talk about.
Yes.
But try to focus on what precipitated these emotions. And if you can kind of self-regulate, take a deep breath and say, okay, maybe this is anxiety.
Absolutely. That's something that helped me in the beginning, is having those grounding techniques that I can't wait for us to touch on later in the conversation. But grounding techniques absolutely help. And also look at the how, looking for a better word, but detrimental are your symptoms.
Yeah.
If they're not super serious, try to remind yourself, like, okay, I'm not dying. I can breathe. Now, if you are having shortness of breath, that would be a huge changing point.
Correct.
Which is kind of what I used to help ground myself. If I was able to breathe and take full breaths, then I would take advantage of that fully during that time. So
right.
That's kind of what my experience was.
Yeah, absolutely.
So our next question would be, how does COVID-19 impact depression? And I think this one is so big because I see a lot on Instagram, people trying to help people, which I really appreciate. Like, they're letting people know it's okay to feel this grief and it's okay to be angry about, canceled events. So I think that when we talk about how COVID-19 impacts depression, we should also think about things like grief and...
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I agree. I think, depression and anxiety often come hand in hand. Mm-hmm. And similarly, like I mentioned before, some people live with these feelings and this is nothing new, maybe just exacerbated. Mm-hmm. For some people, this is a whole new beast. So COVID-19 definitely impacts depression. I think, I'm not sure that COVID in general impacts depression. I think the ramifications from COVID impact depression.
Yes, this pandemic and everything that's coming with it. Yes.
It's the uncertainty that surrounds it. It's the sense of isolation because we need to social distance. It's the fact that things are closed and our normal routines are thrown off. So all of that stuff can impact our mental health. Mm-hmm. Like we talked about, what does that look like? That looks like sadness. That looks like confusion. That looks like lack of motivation, lack of desire to get up and go and take a shower. Because why? Today is the same as tomorrow is the same as yesterday, right? We know this. We are living in a real life Groundhog's Day. Plug to that movie if no one's ever seen it. It's super relevant at this time. So yes, depression can be exacerbated right now. I think just like Shanique said, what can you do? You can reach out for help, right? Reach out to loved ones, reach out to friends. You are not alone at this point. Reach out to mental health providers. Tons of providers are doing telehealth right now. I'm doing telehealth. A lot of other places are doing telehealth. Reach out to a licensed professional that can help you cope with these feelings, because yes, they can get worse. They can get exacerbated. But there are people to help support you through this time.
And if you need a physical way to know that you're not alone, I am it. Please look at me and know that, like, even though I'm here smiling and I'm on Facebook Live and I'm talking about this, it's helping me through these really, serious issues. And I'm dealing with this in a way that works best for me, but I am with you, literally, I'm there. So if you need someone, reach out to me, because we're in this together. I need people to talk to.
Yeah, so, I think just like Trina had posted on the that little flyer, she said, I'm so glad we're talking about this. We wouldn't be talking about this if it wasn't real.
Yeah.
Right? We wouldn't be talking about it if numerous people weren't experiencing this. Yeah, see, that's exactly. This is real, right? It's real for every population, and it's real for those with a disability, because their independence is taken away, your freedoms are taken away, your lack of access is taken away, and these things are already challenging.
Yes.
And now throw in some social isolation on top of it.
The way that I look at it is like the one thing that I was actually able to do is be independent and go and do, you know, social activities, do support group. And I'm so thankful to you guys, which we'll talk about this later, but you guys do offer a virtual support group right now that is extremely helpful to our population. But I think that taking that physical aspect away from the disability community, it's a lot of who we are. Even if whether you're restricted to a wheelchair or you have forearm crutches like me, that physical piece is a big part of it. So when you take it away, a lot of us are dealing with depression, whether it's out in the open or alone. And I really, really hope that after this, we don't feel alone.
Right.
Yeah, it's definitely that loss of human connection, right? And losses of different things like rituals, celebration, birthdays, graduation, school, like you said, independence. So a lot of different losses that we're facing right now.
Mm-hmm. Katrina asked a good question. What services? I'm assuming that she means by she means Weinberg Family CP Center.
Yeah. Yeah, we could touch on that now briefly, or we can do that at the end. Shanique, what do you feel like is best?
I think we could answer it now.
Okay, sure. So like I said, we're a multidisciplinary and a holistic care center. So we do offer psychosocial supports. Again, I offer individual psychotherapy for our patients. I'm licensed in New York and New Jersey. We do currently run one support group for young adults with CP. Hopefully in the future, we will expand to some different age groups. We do offer pre-COVID and hopefully post-COVID. We do offer some events to bring the communities together. And again, our regular medical care, which is orthopedic surgery, neurology services, rehab medicine services. We will give you all our contact information at the end of this. Our website, email address, and phone number, so you can always reach out for more specific questions on things that we have to offer.
So our next question, what are some ways that adults with disabilities or parents of children with disabilities can advocate for what they need right now?
Right, so I think right now it's just a crucial time to kind of take inventory and figure out kind of what it is that we need, and that can be basic needs such as groceries. We typically, before, some of us used to use delivery services, and now everybody's using it. So what are...
Please, Sabrina, I was waiting for you to bring that one up, but go ahead, continue.
So what are some creative ways that we can still, get our groceries? So whether it be, asking a friend to bring you a meal and leave it at the door, or asking a neighbor, hey, would you mind picking up some groceries for me too? So really kind of taking a look at our support networks and activating those as well. There's a lot of physical therapy places that are doing virtual visits as well. I know that we're doing a lot of like telehealth visits as well. If you don't want to come into urgent care at the ER, probably not the best time, but there is still services out there that can be helpful. I know, like, for example, in my building, they were delaying the rent and saying there's funds available for financial hardships. So just trying to be creative of how we can still get our needs met.
I think what's really important too, kind of going along with what you said, Shanique, about this lack of independence, and moving home, right? That is a trigger for a lot of people, right? I know a lot of people I work with, do live alone, and maybe they have aides, caretakers, nurses, and they have a relationship, right? You're still an independent person.
Mm-hmm.
And then you move back home and you now become your parents' kid again, right? It's a natural life progression. So how do we advocate for patients who are now back home? I think kind of like what Sabrina mentioned about, getting your alone time. You are still a grown woman in mom and dad's house and saying like, no, I don't need to eat dinner with the family today. I'm going to eat dinner later. Or I'm going to take this hour and I'm going to sit in my bedroom, or I'm going to go outside, or I'm going to do me for a minute.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe, we're all assuming that everyone has great relationships with their families, and maybe they don't, right? So maybe saying, okay, well, how do we meet everyone's needs? Maybe it's still getting your aide to come in daily, even though you're now at home, right? It's advocating for the best needs of the most amount of people during this time, right? Even for parents, maybe the parents are still working, but now the child moved back home. And now you have to manage all of these things. So advocating to get an aide in to reduce some of the stress from mom for being the 24-hour caretaker. So I think there's a lot of things that we can do, kind of like Sabrina said, take inventory, find out what you need, and then let's go one by one to see how we can meet those needs and fight for you to get those needs met.
Speaking of which, before we move on to that question that's on the screen right now, I want to say, while we're talking about getting needs met, to the people who actually have to be independent right now and do have to go do things like stand in line, what do you guys say to that? Like, how do you advocate to try to, how would someone from that population let someone know, like, hey, this line is really long, I can't stand here? Like, could we talk about that, like, more?
Yeah, I think the interesting thing about something like this, like a global pandemic, is that it really can actually bring the best out in people, right? People are looking at it as a we approach, not a me approach, right? Why are we wearing masks? We're not wearing masks to protect ourselves. I'm actually wearing a mask in public to protect you, right? It is a we approach.
I love that. A we approach and not a
me approach. So basically, if you use forearm crutches, right? It is not comfortable for you to stand on a line for 20 minutes to get into a store.
Yeah.
Maybe ask the people in front of you, hi guys, I'm really sorry. It's very difficult for me to stand. Do you mind if I jump in front? People have, in my experience, and I could be wrong, in my experience, people have been really great.
Yeah.
I think this pandemic is actually bringing out the best in people, and people are willing to support each other and help one another.
Right.
I know, for instance, I'm an able-bodied person, and it is a lot easier for me to stand in line. I went to a food store, and I was early in the morning because I wanted to beat the lines, and on the door, it said, I think I got there at like 8:30 in the morning, and it said for senior citizens, 8 to 9:30 a.m. And, there was like the bouncer guy at the door of the grocery store. And I said, I noticed your sign. Is it possible for me to get in and get my groceries? I work full time and I really need to get in and get some stuff. And he was like, yeah, absolutely. Go on in. Right. I just asked. It can't hurt to ask. I think people are innately good and they want to help. Worst case scenario, they say no. But I really have found that people have been putting their best selves forward.
In my experience as well, and I only can use my own experience. I've had good experiences as well. Not always good, and I think that's important to recognize. But recently, I do notice that people are nicer in terms of kind of letting the people who need to go first. So I appreciate that. What resources do you all recommend in terms of maybe advocacy or like
All of it.
Yeah, all of it.
I think support groups are really helpful. It's always helpful to know that you're not alone. And when you're going through something, just having that cohesiveness. And it could just be, you know, a similar interest group. It doesn't have to be kind of like a let's talk about your feelings group, but just finding some sense of community with other people is really important.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think kind of like what we touched upon earlier, breathing techniques, grounding techniques, especially when you feel like you're getting a bit overwhelmed and a bit anxious. There's some great ones online. We've got a bunch of apps. Headspace is awesome for guided meditation. Calm is a great one for guided
And I think some of them are actually doing a free trial right now.
A lot of them are free. Headspace, Shine, and Calm all offer free versions. And this is not just through COVID. They just offer free versions. I know I will never purchase an app because I think it's silly because there are so many for free. So absolutely. Can you teach us a grounding technique? Yes. One of my favorite grounding techniques, super easy to do. You could do it anywhere. I like to say things out loud because for me, when I say things out loud, it becomes a little bit more real. I am aware, though, that a lot of people do have some verbal limitations, and that's okay. You don't have to say it out loud if you cannot. The easiest grounding technique that I can share with you is called 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Super easy to remember. Why is it called that? We rely on the 5 senses, right? So you start with see, and what you do is you name 5 things that you can see. This can be anything, but directly in front of you. So right now, I would say, I see a computer, I see Shanique, I see Sabrina, I see my microwave, and I see my coffee maker, right? Whatever it is, it doesn't have to be any crazy, amazing thing. Then you go to 4 things that you can feel. Again, noting that a lot of our patients and our community have some physical limitations. Feel can be anything, right? I feel the seat under my butt. I feel the back of my chair rubbing against my back. I feel my pant leg rubbing against my ankle. Or it could be actually tactile. I feel the table underneath my hand, right? So 4 things that you can feel. 3 things that you can hear. This can be anything. So I hear the wind. I hear silence. But if you try really hard, like sometimes I can hear my microwave, like making a weird, like settling noise of where it sits. 2 things you can smell. This one is challenging because not all the times we can smell things, right? If we're in a cleaner environment. So what I like to do is then I like to switch it to 2 things I wish I could smell. So, I wish I could smell like fresh pizza, or I wish I could smell a summer rain. I love that smell. And then 1 thing you can taste. Again, this might be challenging if you are somebody who has issues with speech and swallow, or if there's nothing in your mouth. But then again, 1 thing that you wish you can taste. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go down the 5 senses.
Love that.
The purpose of this is, again, to ground you. It's to take you out of your head, out of the sense of anxiety, and bring you down to where you are right now, right here in the present. So 5 things you can see, 4 things that you can feel, 3 things that you can hear, 2 things that you can smell, and 1 thing that you can taste.
Can I also give a suggestion?
Please.
We're about to close in about 7 minutes, but I do want to give a suggestion that really worked for me earlier in my mental health journey and also right now. Something that really worked for me, and I'm bringing it up here just so that I could share one with you guys.
Please.
Write a gratitude journal. I want to recommend to people right now, especially if you're dealing with a specific mental health journey like depression or anything that you might be feeling, gratitude is the best attitude to have right now. And I know that sometimes we may not feel like there is anything to be grateful for, because everything around us feels like it's spiraling out of control, or everything feels like it's going wrong. But really, if you set that as a goal to find 1 to 3 things to be grateful for a day, I promise that it is doable. So I'm going to share something that I used to write in a gratitude journal that is on my phone. So I start out with emotions and what I'm feeling. So this was September 21st of 2018. Emotions: scared, anxious, unsure, confused, overwhelmed, frustrated. Like, this was like not a good time in my life, but it really helped me to be able to go back. Actually, right now, while I'm talking to you guys, I've grown so much from that time to now. So I just want to recommend to anyone who might be watching this, please try to do a gratitude journal and find at least one thing that you're grateful for. It could be super small and sensitive. Maybe the feeling of the carpet underneath your feet so that you won't have to walk on hard floor. Like, it could be something really simple, like, I'm thankful for breathing right now. A question just came up. How do we begin to think about the near future as cities reopen, and how do we slowly reconnect and resurface socially with others? But yes, please do start a gratitude journal. I recommend that, but we can go on to the next question.
Yeah. Robin, thank you for that question. I think this is a very hard question. I'm not one to sugarcoat things, right? I don't know. And my answer for you right now is I don't know. I don't have all the answers, right? Because I'm going through this just as you are. I think the most realistic thing to do is be realistic, right? I think what we think about in the near future is that the near future is going to look different than our life pre-COVID. And I think what we can do right now is just be hopeful and take it day by day, because we don't know what it's going to look like, right? And we don't know when things are going to be open, at what speed they're going to be open. And I think if we start going down that what if train, that's when the anxiety kicks in, right? So I think what we have to do in terms of thinking about the near future is think slowly, think somewhat hopefully, but more importantly, think realistically. And make sure that health and safety are always the number one when you're thinking about moving forward.
I agree. Julietta said she and her daughter have a gratitude journal. I'm so happy to hear that. Thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah. I will say, going off with the gratitude journal, I used to do one also. And sometimes it's really hard, especially in dark times, to think of something you're grateful for. And I would do simple things, right? Like, I was drinking coffee and I finished the last of my creamer, but I was grateful that I had a little bit left that morning because I wanted coffee.
That's so good.
Not something huge and life-changing, but for that moment, I was grateful I had my cup of coffee. So it can be really small.
I think it's the little things, right?
Yeah.
I think before we kind of were go, 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 and, especially living in New York City, but now this has really forced us to kind of pause and be present and be in the moment.
That's a positive way to think about it. And I also spend a lot of time saying, wow, I'm really grateful for this pause, because I was always on go, but sometimes I do miss it.
Yeah.
So yes, we do have to wrap in 2 minutes, but if we go a little over time, for anyone who might want to contact you guys, how can they do that?
Yep. So you can give us a call, 212-305-2700. That's the direct number to the Weinberg Family CP Center at Columbia University Medical Center. Give us a call. We're here. We can filter your call to the appropriate person. You can also email us. That's coming up on the screen, cpcenter@cumc.columbia.edu. I also want to just give out 2 more resources. I know we did talk about mental health, and it's always really important. If you are experiencing a crisis, please call 911. There's also a crisis hotline if you're in New York City, 1-888-NYC-WELL. You can call them, you can text them. They are 24/7 crisis hotline. Do not call me for a crisis. Call a crisis hotline. There also is a COVID-related support center through the Office of Mental Health. That is a longer number, but I'm going to give it, and I'm going to give it kind of slowly so you guys can take it down if you want. It's 1-844-863-9314. Again, that is COVID-related only. It is not ongoing psychotherapy, but if you're just having some quick anxiety and want to talk to somebody who is trained in COVID-related stressors, it's the Office of Mental Health, 1-844-863-9314.
Love that. Thank you so much, Jan and Sabrina. This was so therapeutic for me personally. So I really hope that everyone else, it was therapeutic for you as well. Yes, check out WeinbergCPCenter.org.
Come visit us.
Yes.
Virtual.
I also want to, I don't know if we want to touch on this, but we do have a support group. Is it available for people to find out about, or? Yeah,
so email us first. Like I said, we're only running one right now. We are a bit full, but email us. Like I said, we are looking to expand our support groups for different age groups. So if it's something you're interested, shoot us an email. We are going to be expanding eventually. It's just Sabrina and I, so we're doing our best. But there are wonderful support groups on Facebook. There are other support groups that you can find all over the internet. A lot of support groups. There are even like COVID-related support groups that you can Google. And most support groups now are doing things virtually. So you will not be left high and dry. Can always just look for some groups, some meetups. Meetup groups are great too. There's the Meetup app that you can get, and a lot of those things are going virtual. There's tons of ways to connect with people who are like-minded.
Katrina asked if we could repeat the number again. Katrina, the number is 212-305-2700.
Yes, that is our CP Center line. It goes directly to us.
Yes, and we're over time. Thank you so much to Dan and Sabrina. Guys, make sure you tune in on Friday for Recess with a story time with Mrs. Ashley's Learning Emporium. We're super excited to have that at 4 p.m. on Friday. So tune in on PunkinFutz Facebook page. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Thank you.